Get ready to invest in yourself and elevate your expertise with the Perio School podcast, brought to you by Perio School. It's Dr. Reena here, and you're joining us for a new monthly show where we'll be providing the latest case studies, first-hand insights, and interviews with our global dental network. Plus, we'll enable you to experience exclusive behind-the-scenes highlights straight from our global portfolio of courses. Let's get started. This season of the Perio School podcast is sponsored by Colgate. Register on Colgate's professional education hub to access all professional and patient resources, including your one-stop shop for all verifiable ECPD. Visit www.colgateprofessional.co.uk today to sign up and register. Welcome to our first mini masterclass, and I thought I'd kick off with the topic of crown lengthening. It's a topic that's so relevant to dentists, hygienists, therapists, and it's one that sometimes isn't taught really well. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the topic, some of the key basic principles, and we can always revisit this at a later time as well in terms of the actual procedure. So what is crown lengthening? Sometimes I hear dentists say, I just tweaked the gum a little bit, took some gum tissue away with a scalpel or electrosurge, and everything was fine, just added the restoration after. That isn't always the right thing to do. Sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you can't. So understanding the actual concept of crown lengthening can help to understand how you do this properly. So crown lengthening, if I had to give it a definition, probably the one that's often quoted is by Cohen 1962. It's the surgical removal of hard and soft periodontal tissue to gain supragingival tooth length, allowing for longer clinical crowns and the re-establishment of the biologic width. That's a classic definition. So when we talk about biologic width, or actually the new definition or new classification for that is supracrestal tissue attachment. I mean, the name has changed actually quite a lot over the years, but you're not going to get penalized for calling it biologic width, but it's technically supracrestal tissue attachment. It's the junction epithelium and the supracrestal connective tissue. So that structure, roughly, according to Garguello et al. 1961, is approximately 2 millimeters. So if you don't have that 2 millimeters, and you could say it's 3 millimeters if you include the sulcus depth, if you don't have that available, then you need to recreate it through crown lengthening. So if you snipped a little bit of the gum away and then you measured from your reference point, the gingival margin, to the alveolar crest, and it was like 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters from that coronal part of the sulcus, that's not enough. So you would then need to raise a flap. You'd need to remove bone to recreate it. So this is what some people fail to understand. So you have to respect the biologic width, either by ensuring it's always present or recreating it through crown lengthening when needed. So if you had a patient with a really gummy smile and you took away a little bit of the gum with a scalpel or a laser, and then you remeasured from the new gum margin till the alveolar crest, so you bone sounded and remeasured it, and it was 3 millimeters, then you're all good. You don't need to raise a flap and remove bone, but it's understanding this concept. And actually, any removal of soft tissue, plus or minus hard tissue, is what we call crown lengthening. So crown lengthening, I think it's a skill that every dentist should be able to do in general practice. There are so many indications for it. There's restorative indications, like if a tooth is broken down, you haven't got enough tooth structure basically to make it restorable. So you need that 2 millimeters of feral sound tooth tissue. So you can use crown lengthening to make that tooth treatable. How many times have you had a case where patient's broken a tooth, it's strategically important, but they don't want to be referred for crown lengthening, and then you have to have it out. Crown lengthening could save the day in those cases. Or if you want to get access to subgingival fractures, caries, perforations in the coronal third, or if the patient has had a situation where, unfortunately, the crown margin is impinging on the supracrestal tissue attachment, you then have to actually, to correct that, use crown lengthening. We've seen so many cases recently, unfortunately, some from abroad, where they've literally just, put veneers 6 to 6 or 5 to 5 or crowns, completely destroyed the teeth, and also completely destroyed the biologic side of thing in terms of invading the biologic width. And we have to literally take everything off, do crown lengthening, and then redo everything again. It's really sad. Anyway, so that's the first indication, it's restorative. The second indication is aesthetic. And this is becoming more and more popular. Some people call it a gum lift when people have gummy smiles, and you're raising or changing the gum contour. Not just for gummy smiles though, it's also when you have like uneven gingival contours. If, for example, common time is when you've finished orthodontic treatment and one gingiva is slightly more coronal than the other, and you just tweak it, but you do it properly, obviously. Sometimes you do need to remove bone, but you tweak it to ensure you get the best result. And it does make a huge difference. These small gum tweakments are really bringing these cases together. And often I say to even our patients, it's like if you had a beautiful photo, but then an awful frame around it, it's not going to do it any justice. You've got to look at both the pink and the white aesthetics, equally as important. So they're your two key indications, two different types of crown lengthening as such. You have restorative, or some people call it functional crown lengthening, or aesthetic crown lengthening. Some of the factors to consider, and I think that actually the hardest part of crown lengthening is the treatment planning side. So understanding what you're doing, understanding of limitations like patient limiting factors, making sure that you've controlled things like if they're a smoker, I probably wouldn't be doing aesthetic crown lengthening. It's just not going to heal as well. Medical conditions you need to be aware of. And then also oral limiting factors, like if someone's got suboptimal oral hygiene or periodontitis, you have to sort that out first. I've seen a lot of people rush into crown lengthening cases and there's plaque everywhere, or biofilm everywhere, or there's, gingivitis or periodontitis, and it's just a mess. It never looks as good. So it's not to say you can't do crown lengthening, but that has to be controlled first. As always, with any other treatment, periodontitis stabilization first. Also looking at local factors and local limiting factors. If you've got a tooth where restoratively, periodontally, endodontically, it's not in your favor, are you then doing heroics to try and crown lengthen it? What about your crown to root ratio? If you've got a tooth with like 80% bone loss and then you're crown lengthening that, it's not probably a good idea. Look at the mobility, look at the furcation entrances, the root proximity. There's so much to think about. So I think look at, firstly, okay, what type of crown lengthening am I doing? What are the limiting factors? Is there anything I need to do before I actually crown lengthen this patient? And then the other thing to also think about during your planning side of things is actually if you're thinking about like gingival excess and someone with a gummy smile, especially, like why do they have that gummy smile? So gingival excess, and that's if you're thinking about the classification, it's under mucogingival deformities and conditions, you'd call it gingival excess as the diagnosis. And you need the diagnosis before you treatment plan these patients. You can't just decide on a treatment. You have to have a diagnosis to prescribe treatment. So you need to say gingival excess, but you do need to break that down. Why has my patient got a gummy smile? Because if you get this wrong, you might be doing the wrong thing. You may not be doing the most appropriate treatment. So for example, is it because of dental factors? Is it because of what we call altered passive eruption? That's probably your most common dental factor. Or is it gingival enlargement? Or could it be soft tissue factors like hypertrophy of the muscles, moving the lip? Could it be a short lip? Because if it's to do with a short lip and not to do with any dental factors, and then you crown lengthen it, that's a problem. You haven't really addressed the main etiological factor. It's actually going to look worse. You need to look at the soft tissue and treatments for that. Or is there skeletal issues like vertical maxillary excess? Do you then need to think about orthognathic surgery? All those types of things. Is there dental-alveolar extrusion? So I think it's very, very important to know the reason for the gingival excess display, so you know how to treat it most appropriately. And sometimes it's a combined approach. But many of the cases we treat at the clinic, they're altered passive eruption cases. Altered passive eruption is actually really common, affects about 35% of the population, according to NUT 2014. And altered passive eruption, I have to say, when I was an undergrad, I actually didn't know what it was. And then when I learned about it, I spotted so many cases. So what it is, essentially when your teeth come out in the jaw, that's called active eruption. And when the gums then remodel around the teeth, that's called passive eruption. If that process doesn't take place properly, that's called altered passive eruption. So the gum fails to recede to the level of the CEJ. You've got too much gum, essentially. The alveolar crest can be at the level of the CJ or 1 to 2 millimeters apical to it, but the gum's just not in the right place. And so it's altered passive eruption. It remains incomplete once that patient is at the age of full jaw development. So 18 to 20 for women, 20 to 22 for men. And it's really, really common. So look out for it. You can use clues, sort of visual clues. You can probe. When you probe, actually, you feel that there's just enamel underneath. And of course, you can numb the patient up. You can then, depending on where the bone is, you can bone sound to then assess whether you're going to need to remove bone or not. You don't always have to. So all these cases are very different, have to be individually treatment planned. But I think that's one I wanted to share because it's so, so common. And when you start seeing it, you think, oh, okay, this patient could do with a little bit of crown lengthening because they've got ultra-passer option. The actual steps in crown lengthening, I won't go through in too much detail, but to give you an overview, when you're thinking about planning your cases, the assessment part is really, really important to plan your approach. And this is some of the things we spoke about already. The other side of it is then your flap design and your incisions. So depending on where your bone is, depending on how much gum you need to remove, your flap design and incisions are key. You then remove your excess gingival tissue. You then raise your flap. Usually, I would say for my cases, like 99% of cases, I would actually raise the flap because I like to see either way where the bone is. And even if you're not removing the height of the bone, it gives you that opportunity to actually reshape the bone as well. So once you've raised the flap, you've got the osseous management side and then suturing back up. And then 2 weeks later, we'd usually remove the sutures, let it heal up. And then some of these cases will need restorative treatment. Some of them won't. So if you do need restorative treatment, like you're going to be doing composites or veneers or crowns, more so for your like indirect restorations, you do need to wait a little while. And if it's posterior or not in the aesthetic zone, the textbook is actually you need to wait for like 3 months. Whereas if it's in the aesthetic zone, textbook is actually 6 months. I have to say most of our referrers would actually end up waiting around 4 months or so and the patient's fine. But there is a waiting period. So you've got to be aware of all the steps and sort of plan this in from the beginning so the patient's aware and you can plan properly in terms of your case. Anyway, that's just a little insight into crown lengthening, definition of biologic width, what crown lengthening actually is, different types of crown lengthening. And I think the most important thing is the planning side, thinking about the limitations, thinking about how to plan your cases and actually understanding why your patient has got a gummy smile or excess gingival display before jumping in and just thinking, oh, I'm just going to remove some gum and bone. We'll go into more detail of the actual procedure in a later masterclass, but I hope that was helpful. Our first case study that we're going to be discussing is with one of our referrers, who is Dr. Neha, who is an expert cosmetic dentist, and we work collaboratively together for many years now, actually, right? So we thought we'd discuss a case that has been quite interesting, both from the clinical point of view, but also from the learnings of the actual patient journey as well. So Neha, kick us off. Tell us more about the patient.
So this patient, Ganeet, she came in looking for Invisalign when she came to see me initially, and she had a midline diastema, and the midline actually had a shift to the left, but she didn't seem too concerned about that. So we did a treatment plan. She went off. I tried to convince her, please, let's close the gap. You're so attractive. It doesn't go. Anyway, she came back about a year later ready to proceed. And so I did Invisalign for her, and we found that the gingival edges were very uneven, so I referred her to you, and you did crown lengthening for me, which worked really well. And then I did a Maryland bridge for her because she didn't want an implant. And I think the really good thing was between us going back and forth, because you contoured the edentulous ridge as well, which I've not had done before. I've sent for teeth, but not really said, can you contour space for me? And that worked really well.
Yeah, no, for sure. So from our side, the crown lengthening itself, it was sometimes with these cases, it's quite a subtle change, but actually sometimes it's those subtle cases which are the hardest.
That's right.
I find sometimes the dramatic ones that we've treated in the past, they're actually easier cases and patients are happy straight away. Sometimes it's the small tweaks. So I think I always find it's important to manage the patient's expectations, but also don't be overconfident and be like, oh, this is going to be a straightforward case. Actually, really think about it in detail. So we did crown lengthening. It was pretty much 3 to 3. Obviously, the 2 was missing. And we recontoured the edentulous ridge. And I think that is a nice treatment approach. Otherwise, the margin of your pontic may not be ideal. And then they're just going to focus on that. In terms of what we did with that side of things, what did you find helpful in terms of making it the best outcome possible?
I think timing wise, and when I refer to you, I know it's predictable. And I think it really helped when you said, okay, you can go in now and put the Maryland Bridge on, and you can add increments of composite, which I did. And that really helped to mold the gum a little bit more.
Right.
So I think being able to go back and forth with you for timing was really good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think also like that communication between dentists or whoever, specialists you're working with, I think that communication is super important. And sometimes I think we feel like, oh, we're referring to a clinic, we have to be very formal and email them and, but I think with us always it's been quite informal and you can just pick up the phone. And I think from speaking to other dentists, I think and hygienists and therapists as well, when you're working with another person, I think sometimes it's easier just to pick up the phone call and just discuss a case and work together, because that's how you get the best outcomes. And the patient was pretty happy in the end. She was a little bit tricky to get to where we wanted to be.
Yeah. I think what was interesting with her, what we spoke about earlier, is managing expectations, and where a patient came in quite happy to walk around with a massive gap in the front of her teeth, to suddenly being very pedantic about 0.5 to 1 millimeter gum levels.
Right.
And luckily we managed it well, so she got a fantastic result. But yeah, just how the patient's perspective changes as well, and they start, bringing the mirror closer and closer.
Yes.
So I think that's really important from the outset to think, even though patients doesn't seem very bothered now, they may well be by the end of the journey.
For sure. And having like all your protocols in place and consents in place. And, when we do our consent for crown lengthening, we're very, very specific. We actually draw roughly what we're aiming for, but make it clear it might not be exactly the same. So I think especially like with your smile design cases, you have to manage that it's not going, it possibly might not be exactly what they see in the photo or drawing or diagram or whatever, and manage that. With the crown lengthening as well, I think it was good you referred. Now you've done the crown lengthening course, so you're able to treat these cases. But, we often see dentists just tweaking the gum and not thinking about the biologic width and everything else. Obviously for this, it was minor, but we did need to remove some bone. And that gives us the stability for the case long term as well. Exactly. Have you seen her again recently, or what's the long term kind of?
She comes in, looking
happy.
Absolutely stunning, happy, showing her teeth off. She thinks she got a promotion. She
Amazing.
Met someone, so I think it gave her the confidence to just go out there and be herself.
For sure. I do think crown lengthening is one of those procedures where it does impact on quality of life. Thank you so much, Dr. Neha, for sharing that case with us and referring to us and being part of our referrer network. It's always so fun to work together. It's probably the highlight of what I do, is working with talented other clinicians, and looking forward to many more cases together.
Absolutely. Thank you for looking after all my patients over the years.
Thank you. And now we're bringing you live behind the scenes, right in the heart of all the action in Perio School. So we're live here in our Perio School facility, state-of-the-art facility here at 75 Harley Street. This week has been a super exciting week. We've actually got 12 delegates, international delegates, who have travelled from across the globe, from the Canary Islands, from different parts of the UK, from Australia, and they are here for our International Diploma in Periodontics for hygienists and therapists. We have got 3 days of intense hands-on. We've been doing all sorts of things like photography, EMS training, lots of different skills that they've been learning online throughout the last few months. So what I thought would be nice is if we ask the delegates one key thing that they've learned during these 3 days, and we can share that with you.
Hello, my name is Hiba, and my top tip is when probing, be nice and gentle and have a 25-gram pressure.
Hi, my name's Emma, and my top tip is oral hygiene is absolute key.
Hi, my name is Suraj. My top tip would be, if you're trying to numb up the patient's mouth, particularly around the lower 7s to 8s, sometimes you might need to treat it lingually. So giving anesthetic lingually will help to fully numb up that area.
Hi, my name is Nelly, and my hot tip would be to always keep in mind that stress and depression can affect people's ability to maintain good oral health. And one thing also when administering local anesthetic is to remember to keep the bevel towards the bone.
Hi, my name is Renata, and my top tip is to look out when you're replacing your scalers curettes is the double-sided curettes.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and my top tip is to always remember diabetes. It's one of the biggest risk factors for periodontal disease and increases periodontal risk, susceptibility and severity.
My name is Sam, and my top tip is that not always one round is going to cure the patient's perio. Sometimes there's a certain healing capacity within a pocket, so sometimes more than one round is needed to really try and stabilise the disease.
Hello, my name is Bridget. My hot tip is when you are probing and doing a 6-point pocket chart, remember to tuck that probe in into proximately, because it really does make a difference.
Hi, my name's Chloe, and my hot tip would be to stress the importance of nutrition to periodontal patients.
Hi, I'm Gemma. My top tip would be to get familiar with your camera. It's a great understated or underrated tool, and patients will forget where they started.
Hi, I'm Kath. My top tip would be to make sure that you educate your patients so that they know why they need to do what they need to do and hand ownership back to them of their disease.
Amazing. Yes, I think we deserve a round of applause. Thank you so much, guys. I think all the top hot tips I think will be appreciated by the dental community, so thank you so much. So for our dentistry life section in today's podcast, we are joined by Dr. Richard Marks, and I'm sure he needs no introduction, but just to give you a bit of background, after graduating with a distinction from Guy's, King's and St. Thomas's Institute of Dentistry, Dr. Richard is a renowned celebrity dentist who cares for some of the most celebrated smiles in showbiz and beyond, and I'm sure you've seen all his amazing cases on Instagram and all the different types of people he treats. So we wanted to get a little behind the scenes about your life. So I've got some quick fire questions for you, but welcome onto the podcast.
Thank you.
So Richard, tell us how you start your day. What's your ultimate morning routine?
Okay, so my ultimate morning routine, I do start pretty early. I actually get up at 5 a.m. most days. I always drink water straight away to hydrate. I'll listen to some either meditation or manifestation. I'm a big believer in that. And then I usually most mornings go to the gym before work and grab a coffee and then arrive.
And do you have breakfast, or is coffee or breakfast? Do you have anything to eat before you start your day?
Yeah, so if I have breakfast, I'm trying to have a high protein breakfast. So there's these protein pots with egg, which are good, either from Leon or Farmer J, recommend. Yes. Otherwise, nothing.
Fair enough. 3 things we can find in your work bag.
Yeah, I think my iPhone, my AirPods, and always my gym kit as well. Obviously, I've got my dental top.
Of course. And your favorite or most used app on your phone?
So I think it's actually YouTube. I think YouTube is kind of underrated in some ways, that you can learn so much. I listen to kind of business podcasts and clips, as well as a lot of historical things. So you can learn so much about the world through YouTube.
Love it. And, day to day, when you're seeing patients, you do a variety of treatments, but do you have a favorite one that you enjoy performing?
Yeah, so I think my favorite is one thing that I'm known for, the cosmetic full smile makeover, especially veneers and the whole mouth treatments. That's my ultimate favorite. I also enjoy doing a smile makeover with teeth straightening and whitening as well as an alternative.
And this is a tricky question, but what's been your career highlights so far, if you had to pick one thing?
Yeah, I think, there's been so many highlights, as with many people, but one amazing thing was being on the cover of the BDA prospectus, which was as an ambassador for the profession. I remember that year at the dental show, they had hundreds of those prospectuses everywhere. So I was just seeing myself everywhere, but it was a real honor.
Amazing. And how would you say your colleagues describe you?
Well, I would hope that they would say kind and considerate, definitely hardworking, and hopefully good with the patients and wanting to make a real difference to people.
I would definitely agree with that. Describe yourself in one word if you had to give yourself like one description.
So the one word that I would use is joyful. And I really try to bring joy into everything that I do. I always say that I'm aiming to help the patient not just smile physically with their teeth, but also to kind of have an inner smile and enjoy the experience as much as is possible for dentistry.
And you're in front of the camera quite a lot, TV, etc. What would be your best tip for someone who's not so confident with that?
So what I would say is, if you're on camera, it's important to actually relax and be yourself as much as you can. The camera actually magnifies everything. So the more kind of nerves you have, the more it magnifies that. And the more relaxed you are, the more that comes across. It is hard to do, everybody gets nervous in front of the camera, even people who are doing it all the time. But if you can be yourself, your authentic self, that's what people want to see.
For sure. Any favourite life quotes?
Yeah, I think if you believe in your dreams, you can do anything you want. That's actually a quote from Walt Disney.
No, that's definitely one of my favourites as well. Would completely agree. And what's your ideal spot when you're off duty?
South of France, if possible.
Pop down to
Otherwise,
France.
Harrods.
And your favourite kind of music or podcasts?
Yeah, so I love podcasts, firstly. Typical ones that people listen to, but especially Diary of a CEO. I love the Jay Shetty podcast. And I also like a lot of business podcasts, founders podcasts, which talks about business founders. When it comes to music, I actually like a lot of pop music, as well as R&B and soul, but Lady Gaga, she's
mix.
Amazing.
Do you prefer music or podcasts, would you say?
I would say podcasts.
Yeah. And what TV show would you most like to guest star in?
I think Dragon's Den. That would be great, to be on the panel.
And day to day, how do you stay motivated?
I think to stay motivated, just remember that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And every day, if you can just be consistent and break every day into bits, then you're going to have some really good days and some that are more challenging. But if you keep your eye on the end goal, you'll always get there. And you kind of have to enjoy the journey, the ups and downs.
And did you always want to be a dentist, or what profession did you want to be when you were a child?
I think, it is in my family. My grandfather was the first. He came from Portugal. He met my grandmother, who's British, here, and my father was at dental school, my uncle. So there's a few of us. My sister Arabella is a dental therapist. So, there's a big family thing. And I think I always wanted to be like my father. Like, he's my hero. And he's amazing, and he enjoyed his job right up to the end. He didn't even want to retire, but he had to. But I think that I also was interested in medicine as another thing. I think that's a great, caring profession, something with people, and something that you feel like you made a difference. In dentistry, it can be challenging, but every day you're making a small difference to people's lives. So it's rewarding every day.
For sure. Any advice you'd give to your younger self now looking back?
I think just remember that whatever challenges you face, and there is going to be ups and downs, just remember that that's part of life's twists and turns. And, in the end, everything will come together. Believe in yourself and, believe in your team and teamwork, and then everything will come together.
And final question, what are you most looking forward to or have coming up?
So I do actually have some really exciting TV projects coming up, which I'm super excited about, but unfortunately we can't mention them at the moment.
So watch this space. Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. That gives us a really nice insight into your day-to-day life. And looking forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you.
This season of the Perio School podcast is sponsored by Colgate. Register on Colgate's professional education hub to access all professional and patient resources, including your one-stop shop for all verifiable ECPD. Visit www.colgateprofessional.co.uk today to sign up and register.